Welcome to Mastermind Conversations, a Pro Insights podcast, powered by Geek in New York, where we don't just talk, we geek it. We break down complex topics, research from trusted sources, and bring your expert insights, real-life stories, and actionable tips, all in a clear and engaging way. So get ready, it's time to geek it with Mastermind Conversations.
Okay. We're diving deep today into a really interesting stack of source material all about house remodeling services.
Yeah, it's quite a mix.
It is. Our listener brought in this diverse collection. I mean, we've got everything from dense technical manuals on plumbing and framing
The heavy stuff.
to glossy design magazines showing off these beautiful spaces, and even some notes touching on regulations, landscape design. It's all in here. And we're going to look at it all through the lens of someone, maybe you, thinking about a remodeling project, maybe in Los Angeles or the surrounding areas.
Which makes sense because remodeling really is all those things combined, isn't it? It's the technical bones of the house, sure, but also the rules you have to follow, the look you want, and, well, how you actually make it happen.
Absolutely. So our mission with this deep dive is to sift through all this stuff and pull out the absolute most important nuggets. You know, the surprising facts, the key insights, the practical things that can give you, our listener, a real head start on understanding what actually goes into transforming a home.
Trying to give you the core research without, burying you in every single tiny detail.
Exactly. Think of us as your guides, sort of highlighting what the experts who wrote these sources thought was critical, whether it's like a specific building technique or a design trend or just a vital planning step.
Yeah, the key takeaways.
And let's be honest right up front. Digging through technical manuals, figuring out building codes, vetting different ways of doing things, that's a lot. It's a significant undertaking.
Oh, definitely.
Remodeling involves a ton of investigation, planning, and really knowing how to do complex tasks safely and correctly. It's work you might quickly realize, it requires professional expertise.
You hit a point where DIY just doesn't cut it for certain things.
Right. And that actually brings us nicely to our sponsor today, Royal Family Construction.
Because navigating all those specifics permits, figuring out the existing structure, planning tricky plumbing or electrical changes, making sure everything's up to code, it takes precision, experience, and, frankly, a deep understanding of the whole process.
It really, really does. Royal Family Construction specializes in handling exactly these kinds of investigative needs for homeowners. They can step in, manage all that complexity, which lets you focus on your vision for the space, on what truly matters for your home and how you live in it.
And they've got a great reputation. The 5-star reviews back that up. That's exactly what you want when you're trusting someone with a big project like a remodel.
That kind of track record, it speaks volumes. Reliability, quality of work, it's all there. So if you're thinking about a project and maybe feeling a bit daunted by all the investigative work and planning involved, you can give Royal Family Construction a call at 818-441-6705. Let them handle those investigative needs so you can focus on what truly matters.
Okay, sounds good. Where should we start with this stack?
All right, let's unpack this stack of sources and start pulling out the key insights. Maybe we can begin with the different types of remodeling projects they highlight.
Sounds good. Well, one type of project that the sources definitely cover, and it's become super relevant, especially in places like the LA region you mentioned, is accessory dwelling units, ADUs.
Yes. We have a source here that actually references a YouTube discussion about new ADU laws, specifically mentioning SB 1211.
Right. And this source, it describes SB 1211 as a heavy hitter, even calls it a whopper of a bill. And this is a really crucial distinction. The source makes this specific bill is primarily focused on multifamily dwellings.
Okay, so the whopper part might be more about its impact on apartment buildings or condos, not necessarily the typical single-family house.
Exactly. But the source uses that context to then pivot and highlight something pretty fascinating about single-family dwelling properties under the existing rules. It explicitly says that on a single-family lot, you could potentially have an internal conversion ADU, converting a garage or part of the house.
Okay.
Plus a detached ADU, like a separate backyard unit.
Right.
And a junior accessory dwelling unit, or JADU, which is a smaller unit created inside the existing main house, all potentially on one lot.
Whoa. Wait, really? An internal conversion, a detached unit, and a JADU, all on one single-family property. That's
Exactly.
That's incredible potential for adding space or maybe rental units.
It really is. And the source notes that the rules are different when you're dealing with actual multifamily zoned properties, though the excerpt we have doesn't spell out those exact differences.
Okay.
Well, what this tells us right from the source material is why ADUs are such a hot topic in remodeling. They offer real ways to expand living space or generate income. And the key insight here, underlined by the source's focus on legislation, is that for any ADU project, digging into the regulatory landscape for your specific property type isn't just important, it's like step zero. It's foundational research.
It basically dictates what you can even think about building and where.
Precisely. It's the absolute starting point, non-negotiable.
So, if an ADU is on your radar, step one, according to the wisdom in these pages, is a serious dive into your local zoning and the state regulations.
Couldn't have said it better. Okay, so moving beyond brand new structures like ADUs, the sources spend a lot of time on probably the most common and impactful remodeling projects: kitchens and bathrooms.
Oh yeah, the design magazines are just full of gorgeous kitchens and baths. I did see one really interesting note, though, from the Kitchen and Bath Design News source. It was about kitchen designers working on their own kitchens.
Ah, yes, I saw that too.
Yeah.
The source described them as potentially being both the best and worst client. Best because, well, they're informed, creative, maybe more adventurous, but worse because they can be, and I think the quote was, excruciatingly choosy and prone to tendencies toward perfectionism.
That's fantastic insight, isn't it? It just shows how complex and maybe even emotionally charged kitchen design is, even for the pros. As someone who designs kitchens for a living finds their own project that challenging.
Right. It really underscores how overwhelming it can feel for a homeowner who's maybe doing this for the first or second time ever.
It totally highlights the value of bringing in outside help. You know, a designer or a good contractor. You get their expertise without maybe getting stuck in that endless loop of second guessing that the source suggests even experts can fall into on their own projects.
Makes sense.
That same Kitchen and Bath Design News survey, it was from December 2024, I think also gives us a glimpse into the market conditions. It mentioned forecasting a gradual softening in residential remodeling during 2024.
Yeah, even though they were expecting revenue gains in 2025, sort of a complex picture.
So what reasons did the source give for that softening?
Well, they cited a few things. High interest rates, obviously, inflated costs for materials and products, a generally sluggish housing sector, some uncertainty around the election, and also this significant split in the market itself.
A split? What did the source mean by that? Like at different types of projects?
Kind of. They saw robust activity in the luxury sector, so high-end projects were still going strong, but contrasted that with pronounced softness in the market's middle and lower end.
Ah, okay. So the really expensive high-end kitchen and bath remodels were maybe less affected, but folks aiming for a more moderate budget were feeling the economic pressures more.
That seems to be the picture painted by the survey and the source. And for you, the listener, this is practical research. Knowing where your project budget sits might give you a clue about the market conditions you'll face. It could influence timing, how you allocate your budget, maybe even contractor availability or pricing, although the source doesn't directly connect those dots.
That's really useful context. Beyond the market stuff, the sources dive deep into the aesthetics, talking about combining beauty and function to create, quote, distinguished spaces.
Oh yeah, and they give us tons of specific design trends and material ideas, especially from the magazines. For kitchens, they mentioned mixing finishes and materials to get unique looks. A big trend noted was how white cabinetry is evolving, moving towards warmer undertones, not just stark white. And interestingly, they flagged a rising popularity for the red family in cabinetry.
Reds. In cabinets, like actual red.
Yeah, from dusty roses all the way to deep maroons. The source said it's sort of following the path that blues and greens took in recent years. Definitely a bolder choice.
Wow, okay. That is a statement.
It is.
Yeah.
They also talked about balancing palettes, juxtaposing those comforting neutrals like an undyed cotton, wool, mushroom, soil tones.
Right, the calming stuff.
With darker shades like cocoa or red-based browns, which are meant to give a sense of stability and longevity.
So that kind of a grounded feel, but with potential for these richer, more expressive pops of color, like the reds.
Exactly. Other design bits from the sources, darkening wood stains are in, using higher contrast wood grains, opting for tinted blacks for that sort of understated luxury feel. Mineral tones also got a shout out. Dusky purple, purple brown, teal highlighted as versatile, kind of gender neutral options.
And they even got specific about hardware and fixtures, right?
Totally. They mentioned specific faucets, like Hansgrohe's Econo Select, which apparently has 3 spray modes and different spout shapes, and Guessie's Officine faucet. That's the one with the really distinct industrial vintage pipe look.
Oh, yeah, I remember seeing that. Very cool.
It just shows how even the functional bits are part of the whole design statement now. Accessory finishes listed to all the usual suspects: chrome, brushed nickel, golden champagne, champagne bronze, oil rubbed bronze, and matte black. They mentioned a Merox Glacio collection as an example for those.
And appliances.
One example given was a concealed ceiling-mounted range hood from Falmec. It had LED lighting and a recirculating filter system. Just shows that trend towards seamless integration, hiding the functional parts.
That's a ton of detail just for kitchens. What about bathrooms? Did the sources give them similar treatment?
Oh yes. Bathrooms got plenty of attention. They outlined different shower options: a standard over a bathtub setup, a stall shower, with the note that using a prefabricated base can be simpler and more cost-effective,
Good tip.
a walk-in enclosure, or even a dedicated wet room.
And I remember seeing a practical tip in there somewhere. Something about bathtubs.
Yes. The source specifically advised against removing the only bathtub in a household if you're putting in a standalone shower.
Right. That's probably smart for resale value and just general family functionality.
Definitely. The sources also touched on some pretty high-tech shower features, pulling from an ISH 2011 review, things like chromotherapy lighting, different water outputs like waterfall and rain settings, body jets, even integrated bath fillers.
Wow, high-tech from over a decade ago still sounds pretty advanced.
It does. They also mentioned minimalist sliding door mechanisms that integrate right into the shower base, citing Roman's Desire range as an example.
Cool. And materials for bathrooms.
Lots of examples of mixing materials. Neutral shades combined with natural stone floor tiles, pale limestone surfaces, walls mixing different types of limestone, and porcelain planks designed to look like other materials, like stone.
So lots of texture and natural element.
Seems like it. They even mentioned handcrafted wood baths, like William Garvey's Zofiro, showing that range from cutting-edge tech to very traditional craftsmanship is all possible.
Did they mention any specific bathroom project examples?
Yes, a couple were cited. One called Atreya featured a modern minimalist bathroom using black and gray matte tiles in these cool linear and square patterns. Another project, Shakti Bungalow, was noted for using royal blue and earthy tones, though that was in a living area, showing color trends beyond just kitchens and baths.
Okay, so these examples help visualize the design concepts. And crucially, I saw one source, the one focused on kitchen remodeling contractors, made a point about portfolios.
Yes. This is a key vetting tip straight from the source material. It said that a contractor's portfolio gives them instant credibility, answers questions about their experience and the style of work they do, and ultimately helps them close sales.
So the clear takeaway for you, the homeowner, is that you should absolutely be asking to see this portfolio when you're researching and talking to potential contractors.
Exactly. It's tangible proof of their past work. A must-see.
Okay, so summing up kitchens and baths, complex projects influenced by market trends, endless design options, but looking at past work, the portfolio is highlighted as a really solid step in vetting who you hire.
Makes sense. Now, should we move outside the house? The sources also covered landscape remodeling and improvements.
Yeah, let's do that. One source made a pretty compelling case right off the bat, saying a well-designed, functional home landscape adds not just family joy, but also increases the value of your property.
Joy and value sounds like a win-win investment.
Doesn't it? The sources described modern landscapes as being both beautiful and useful, providing space for recreation, adding privacy, giving pleasure, but also prompting homeowners to think about positive environmental impacts.
That's a nice holistic view. What specific landscape features did they mention?
Quite a few, actually. Terraced gardens, perennial gardens designed specifically to spill over walls around pools or spas, stone staircases, bluestone terraces, using crisp wood fencing for privacy, and incorporating sculpted stonework.
Pennsylvania fieldstone retaining walls got a specific mention too, right?
Yes, exactly, highlighting specific regional materials or styles. They also talked about planting strategies like restoring ecological health with strategically placed new vegetation and using water-conscious plant palettes, which is super relevant in places like Southern California.
Definitely. Any technical details?
A small one noted was how using porous moss joints in hardscaping, like between stones, can actually help create a more moist microclimate.
Interesting little detail. Did the sources talk about the planning process for landscape design?
Oh yeah, extensively. It showed it's way more involved than just picking some plants.
What did it include?
Analyzing existing conditions, doing character and precedent studies, developing a full site master plan, creating detailed construction drawings, selecting materials, coordinating with sub-consultants, managing the actual construction, selecting plants, lighting, ornaments, even providing guidance on ongoing property maintenance.
Wow. That really drives home that landscape design isn't just decorating the yard, it's a full-blown design and construction project.
Totally. It underscores the level of planning needed for a really successful outcome. And the sources emphasized collaboration, that partnership between the designer, the client, and the builder as being key.
Did they give any real-world examples?
Yes, there was a specific project, the Farlow Hill residence in Newton, Massachusetts. It won a Gold Award back in 2013.
Okay, so a recognized project. What did the source say about it?
It was used as a case study. It involved landscape design, construction, irrigation, the works. And a key detail mentioned was that they removed overgrown foundation plantings specifically to reveal the architectural facade of the house. It showed how landscape work can dramatically improve not just the yard, but the whole curb appeal and how you see the home itself.
That's a great example of the impact. Did any sources get into the nitty-gritty of actually building stuff for the garden?
Some did. They provided details on building things like a potting bench, mentioning using cleats and screws, constructing planters, specifying lumber sizes like 2x8s and fasteners like deck screws, even building a garden bench using dimensional lumber, concrete foundation blocks, and this interesting interlocking joinery, kind of like Asian timber framing, to minimize fasteners.
So the landscape sources really covered the why, the value, and enjoyment, what the features and the detailed planning process, and even some specific how-to construction details. It shows landscape remodeling is a significant project adding real functional and monetary value, needing careful planning and execution.
Absolutely. Okay, should we shift now to the real how-to stuff, the technical aspects, the building details behind the walls and under the floors that the sources get into?
Yeah, let's do it. This is where those technical manuals really start to shine or maybe intimidate. Structural stuff, plumbing, electrical, exactly. And the sources provide the kind of details that licensed pros rely on. For structure and framing, they describe specific techniques, like how to remove wall studs, noting you sometimes need to cut through the center with a reciprocating saw, and crucially, check for exterior nails before you start yanking on it.
That sounds like a small detail, but one that could save a lot of hassle or damage.
Precision is everything in framing. They explain how to frame a rough opening for a door or window, outlining the installation of king studs, jack studs, and how headers are constructed either by sandwiching plywood between lumber or just buying engineered headers.
The sources also talked about using 2x6 lumber for walls, right? Instead of the standard 2x4?
Yes, and they explained why. You can space 2x6s on 24-inch centers instead of 16-inch centers.
Okay, so wider spacing.
Right, and that wider cavity allows for thicker insulation R19 or even R21. The source actually connects this directly to the International Residential Code from 2006, so it shows how framing choice directly impacts energy efficiency and meeting code.
That's a great connection. There was also a detail about installing sub-fascia strips onto rafter tails. Something about alignment.
Yeah, using a speed square to make sure they're perfectly aligned. This ensures the roof sheathing has the proper overhang for drainage. It's those kinds of granular steps that build a solid, weatherproof structure.
The sources also got into soundproofing, didn't they? Adding mass to walls and ceilings.
They mentioned different methods, using staggered stud or double stud partitions, installing dedicated soundproofing board, using special sound-rated drywall, or even just adding multiple layers of regular drywall.
And they specifically called out resilient channels and mass-loaded vinyl MLV as being particularly effective systems. I think the source claimed MLV could more than double a wall's sound transmission class rating.
Yeah, MLV is pretty heavy-duty stuff. The sources also mentioned some technical details for things like panel inserts, the kind you might use in wall treatments or cabinetry, stressing the need for perfectly square cuts, recommending a table saw, and allowing a 14-inch clearance for proper fit and letting the material expand and contract a bit.
This whole section from the sources, it feels absolutely critical for understanding the bones and the hidden layers of a remodel. It affects durability, comfort, energy use, safety, everything.
It really does. These details give you a glimpse into the what and how that happens behind the finished surfaces, things you might not even think about, but are absolutely vital for a quality, lasting job.
And this is exactly where the complexity of remodeling really hits home, I think. trying to tackle these technical structural tasks, making sure the insulation is right, soundproofing effectively, framing openings precisely. It requires specific knowledge, the right tools, and sticking to building standards.
Yeah, it's not just about being handy with a hammer. It's about technical proficiency and making sure everything is up to code.
And that kind of detailed investigative work, understanding the existing structure, knowing the requirements for any changes, that's exactly what our sponsor, Royal Family Construction, excels at.
Right. They have the experience to assess the situation, plan the structural work safely and effectively, and make sure it's all done according to code and best practices, like the ones detailed in these manuals.
That level of technical skill and commitment to doing things right is why those 5-star reviews are so well earned, you know? They handle the foundational work, making sure it's solid.
Which takes a huge weight off the homeowner's shoulders.
Totally. So remember, you can call them at 818-441-6705. Let Royal Family Construction handle your investigative needs, all that complex technical stuff, so you can focus on what truly matters, seeing your vision for your home become reality.
Okay, good point. So, sticking with the technical deep dive, let's wade into plumbing and electrical systems based on these sources.
Okay, brace yourself. The plumbing sections in these manuals looked incredibly detailed.
They really are. And they cover a huge range. They talk about different pipe types you might find or use in a remodel. There's CPVC, that's chlorinated polyvinyl chloride, which is noted as inexpensive and able to handle high temperatures and pressures. Chromed brass, which you often see for exposed drain traps under sinks because it looks nicer. And then there's PEX, cross-linked polyethylene. It's highlighted because the fittings are relatively simple, often using crimping tools. And this is a key warning from the source, PEX from different manufacturers is often not interchangeable.
Oh, wow. That's a really specific, important nugget from the source. You can't just grab any PEX fitting for any PEX pipe.
Exactly. Critical info for repairs or additions. And the source also flags that those little water supply lines for aftermarket ice makers, often installed using PEX or similar tubing, are a very common source of leaks if the installation isn't done meticulously.
A hidden danger zone in a seemingly simple upgrade. What about basic plumbing skills?
The sources walk through fundamentals, like how to solder copper pipes properly, cleaning the joint, applying flux, heating it evenly with the torch, not too much, not too little, and then testing if it's hot enough by touching the solder to the joint itself. If it's right, the solder melts and flows right in.
Like watching a pro do it, step by step in writing.
Pretty much. Common repairs are covered too, like how to fix leaks in those standard double-handled faucets. Explaining it often just needs a new washer if it's a compression type, or maybe an O-ring if it's a cartridge type. You usually access them by removing the decorative cap or knob.
Okay.
And if a compression faucet still leaks after you replace the washer, the source says the valve seat itself might be damaged and needs cleaning or recutting with a special tool. If it's leaking around the handle stem, you might need to add a packing washer or wind some packing material around the stem.
Toilet repairs too, always a fun topic.
Always. The sources address things like loose handles, or when the toilet won't flush or doesn't flush completely. Often, the fix involves adjusting the lift chain or the water level in the tank. They list these symptoms, emphasizing how often the chain length or water level is the culprit.
Any warnings?
Yes. When replacing a flush valve, they detail positioning it correctly and securing it with a spud nut. But there's a specific warning. Do not over-tighten the spud nut because you can easily crack the porcelain tank. Just hand tight, plus maybe a half turn with a wrench is usually enough. Good to know. The sources also got into really specific fixture requirements, didn't they? Sounded almost like code excerpts.
Definitely. Things like strainers are required on most fixtures except toilets or sinks with garbage disposals. Bathtub waste outlets need a strainer or stopper and must be at least 1.5 inches in diameter. Lavatory drains need one too, at least 1.25 inches.
And lavatory faucets have minimum run times. And crucially, public lavatory and all shower fixtures need automatic safety mixing devices.
To prevent scalding, right?
Exactly. To prevent sudden temperature shifts or dangerously hot water. The source mentioned a max setting of 110 degrees Fahrenheit for public lavatories.
Shower installation details too.
Yep. Most shower receptors need a shower pan made of lead, copper, ABS, PVC, or fiberglass. The pan material has to turn up the walls at least 2 inches above the finished dam or threshold. And the pan has to be securely fastened to the drain trap at the seepage entrance to make a watertight joint. Waste outlets need to be at least 2 inches diameter, with a removable strainer.
Wow, that's specific. What about the water supply coming into the house?
The sources cover that deeply too, stressing that any place meant for human habitation must have a potable water supply. And that potable water absolutely cannot be connected to any non-potable water source, like maybe an irrigation system using reclaimed water. Protection from backflow and back siphonage is critical, usually done with air gaps or specific backflow prevention devices.
They even mentioned identifying non-potable pipes with yellow paint.
Right. And backflow prevention is mandatory, where outlets could potentially be submerged in nasty stuff like sewage or toxic substances. They also mentioned that certain specialized backflow prevention assemblies, the source names RP, RQDA, DCA, DCDA, require annual testing and approval by a certified cross-connection control device inspector, or CCCDI.
Annual testing. That really highlights the safety importance and the need for ongoing professional checks for some systems.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the list of plumbing joint types mentioned in the sources is just staggering. Solvent welded for plastic drain pipes, threaded flanged O-ring expansion joints, ground joints, shielded joints for no-hub cast iron, using special gaskets and stainless steel bands.
Keep going.
Compression joints for hub and spigot cast iron with neoprene gaskets. Compression fittings for copper and brass tubing using brass ferrules. Grooved mechanical couplings for larger pipes. And copper press fittings that use an elastomeric O-ring and a special tool to crimp the joint.
Okay, stop. My head is spinning. What that exhaustive list really tells me is the sheer variety of materials and specific connection methods that professionals have to master just for plumbing.
Exactly. It's way more complex than most homeowners probably imagine. It involves knowing about material compatibility, pressure ratings, ensuring seals are watertight and will last for decades.
They even threw in some physics, right? Something about water flow.
Yeah. Explaining how the volume of flow relates to pressure, how water velocity increases as the pipe size gets smaller for the same volume, and even explaining Bernoulli's principle, using the classic example of why your shower curtain gets sucked inwards when the water's running. Higher velocity inside the shower means lower pressure, so the higher pressure outside pushes the curtain in.
A relatable explanation for a complex idea found right in the manuals. Did they cover sewer system testing?
They did. Mentioned smoke testing, pumping smoke into the sewer lines to identify illegal connections, like maybe a sump pump hooked up incorrectly, or structural issues where sewer gases could leak into a building. They noted it requires specific weather conditions and public notification. And dye testing used to confirm smoke test results or check fixtures that didn't show smoke, and also to identify leaks in manholes.
And just looking inside pipes and manholes, too.
Yep, visual inspection is described as a primary method for checking structural condition, looking for root intrusion, checking joints, seeing how much debris is built up, and observing flow characteristics.
And valves. Different types mentioned.
Couple. Simple stop valves, like under your sink, with a practical tip to use pipe dope or Teflon tape on the threads to make installation easier and removal possible later. And large butterfly valves, the kind used on big water transmission lines, sometimes installed with a smaller bypass valve to help prevent water hammer when opening or closing the main valve slowly. Okay, that deep dive into plumbing really highlights what an intricate, mostly hidden system it is in our homes, and the level of expertise needed to handle it right.
Now, for electrical systems, the source called Electronics for the Electrician seemed pretty hardcore technical. It got into symbols for components like Darlington transistors and defined integrated circuits.
Yeah, it definitely felt like it was aimed at an electrician learning the theory behind the components. Maybe not so much for a homeowner trying to figure out why light flickers.
Right. But the source did make a useful point for homeowners, didn't it? It said that electricians today encounter a lot of electronic circuits in modern installations.
Exactly. It specifically mentioned automatic lighting systems useful for gardens, entrances that use electronic controls to turn lights on at dusk and off at dawn. And these systems can range from simple plug, usually before the final surfaces go up, running wires beneath floors, inside the walls, through ceilings for lights, outlets, phone, internet, whatever equipment's planned. And windows are typically renovated or prepped for painting before the final wall patching and painting happens. That sequence from the source is actually super helpful. It gives you a mental framework for how a complex project flows and which trades need to come in at what point.
Okay, so from the structural bones and the critical role of insulation to the incredibly detailed world of plumbing with its myriad pipes and codes, the increasing presence of electronics and electrical systems, and even the typical project workflow, these sources provide a really deep level of technical detail.
They absolutely pull back the curtain on the what and how that happens behind the scenes. And understanding these details, even just being aware that different pipe materials exist or why backflow prevention is so critical, is invaluable research for you as a homeowner. It helps you appreciate the expertise involved and lets you ask smarter questions when you talk to potential pros.
And this really highlights exactly why working with experienced, qualified professionals is so crucial for these systems. The investigative work needed to understand what's already there, identify potential problems, make sure everything new is installed perfectly to code, using the right materials and techniques.
It's paramount for the long-term safety, durability, and just basic function of your home. It's about peace of mind, really. Knowing the guts of your house are done right.
Couldn't agree more. And handling these detailed technical requirements is absolutely core to what a great construction service does. Our sponsor, Royal Family Construction, has built their 5-star reputation precisely by mastering these challenges. They have the know-how, the understanding of codes and techniques, the skilled team to manage the structural, plumbing, electrical complexities, ensuring it's all done right the first time.
They basically take on that whole burden of detailed investigation and technical execution.
Exactly, which frees you up to focus on the exciting parts, the design, the finishes, the vision you have for your transformed space. So if you're considering a remodel, especially one that touches these critical technical systems, calling Royal Family Construction at 818-441-6705 is a really smart move. Let them handle your investigative needs so you can focus on what truly matters.
Okay, good advice. Now, should we shift gears again? Maybe look at the design and aesthetic elements that the sources highlight. This covers everything from materials and finishes to how spaces are planned and perceived.
Yes, let's. Material choices are such a huge part of remodeling. They completely change the look, the feel, the durability, and, let's face it, the cost of a space.
And the sources offer a good variety of examples across different areas. For flooring, they discussed options like concrete tiles. Noted they're expensive but very hard-wearing and come in lots of colors and finishes. Laminate tiles were presented as a lower to medium-cost alternative to natural stone, and the source mentioned they can sometimes be a DIY installation project. Bamboo flooring got described as hard-wearing, good-looking, in the medium to high price range, with a neat advantage. An oil finish on bamboo can apparently be patch repaired if it gets damaged.
Oh, that's useful. And terracotta.
Medium-priced, known for being porous, gives that warm, inviting look. The tip from the source was to choose pre-sealed terracotta tiles to avoid staining issues.
Okay, that gives a helpful snapshot of flooring options with different price points, pros and cons, and some practical tips, all straight from the source material. What about countertops?
They got to mention too, butcher block wood countertops were highlighted as being a viable option for kitchens now, partly thanks to better finishes and sealants available today. The source even discussed the difference between end grain and edge grain construction and different thicknesses.
Any warnings about butcher block?
Yes. A key practical tip from the source. It's generally a poor idea to use butcher block directly as your cutting surface if you want to maintain its appearance. Why? Because those knife cuts collect dirt and tend to darken differently when you re-oil the surface later, making the cuts stand out.
Ah, that's a fantastic detail. So it looks like a cutting board, but maybe treat it more gently if you want it to stay looking perfect.
Exactly. Treat it more like furniture. Stainless steel and wood countertops in general were also listed as other options.
Wall coverings and treatments seem to feature prominently too.
Yeah, the sources discuss things like building floor-to-ceiling bookcases, installing wainscoting for a traditional look, putting in acoustic tile ceilings, maybe for a basement or home theater, and adding exposed beams for character.
And interior trim work, like around doors and windows.
Detailed mentions there too. Installing mitered casing requires really precise cuts for those angled corners. They also detailed how to design and install built-up chair rails. That's where you combine smaller, less expensive trim pieces with maybe a filler strip to create a more substantial look. And there was a specific proportional tip. The chair rail should always look visually smaller than the crown molding at the ceiling and the base molding at the floor to maintain proper aesthetic balance and scale in the room.
Little rules like that make a big difference in the final look. The sources also touched on using different textures, right?
Yep, they gave an example of using a faux fur cushion, just as a way to soften a space and create atmosphere. Simple touch, big impact. Glass blocks were mentioned specifically in the context of letting light into a space while maintaining some privacy.
And ceramic tile.
Referenced when discussing how to install flooring over a concrete subfloor, connecting a specific material to an installation challenge. Wainscoting was specifically mentioned in the context of library walls, linking that treatment to a particular room's function or style.
Okay, so these details on materials and finishes from the sources give us concrete examples of the tangible things you choose for your remodel, along with some really practical notes on their characteristics, how they're installed, or how they function in the space.
Exactly. The sources also looked at the bigger picture, layout and space planning. That luxury home design source, for instance, offered example floor plans. They showed various architectural styles: cottage, country, traditional, ranch, French country, illustrating different sizes, numbers of bedrooms and bathrooms, overall dimensions, sometimes even including bonus rooms or spaces.
And it included a really helpful disclaimer, didn't it?
Yeah.
Something like, the blueprints shown in the source might differ from the photos provided, so always check the plans very carefully.
Yes. Another great research tip embedded right there in the material. Attention to detail when reviewing plans is absolutely crucial.
What about planning outdoor spaces?
The landscape design source provided methods for that. Included measuring techniques like using a tape measure and establishing baseline measurements from known points like house corners or windows. It discussed inventorying existing features, plants you want to keep, structures, etc., and accurately locating outlying features by measuring from established points like the house, the street, or the property line.
They even showed specific symbols used for different plant types on professional plans and included notes on proper spacing. It really showed the level of detail involved.
And interestingly, there was a source focused on landscape painting that contributed some principles about creating depth.
Landscape painting, how does that relate to remodeling a house?
It was about visual principles. Creating depth as an illusion, strengthening the foreground detail, using elements like placing background features in shadow to enhance perspective. The connection is that you can apply similar visual principles in interior design or landscape design.
Ah, I see, like using foreground elements, contrasts in light or texture, or creating layers in a room or garden to make it feel deeper, more interesting, more three-dimensional, just like a painter does on a canvas.
Exactly, applying artistic principles to physical space.
That's a really cool connection. What other layout or space ideas came up?
The sources mentioned building hidden rooms behind bookcases, presented as a kind of DIY project for creating a luxurious or just plain unique living space.
Oh, okay, that's definitely a conversation piece. A secret room. Awesome.
And more practical design considerations too, like making sure you plan enough space around your windows to actually pull curtains fully back or open shutters completely. It's not just about the window treatment itself, but thinking about how it operates impacts the room's perceived size and how much light you actually let in.
Good point. So layout and space planning, based on these sources, involves everything from drafting formal plans and mapping out landscapes to applying visual tricks and incorporating clever features like hidden rooms, all aimed at envisioning and optimizing the potential of your space.
Definitely. And beyond the more common projects, the sources also introduced several specialty projects, often framed as DIY, but they highlight the specific elements involved in creating these less common spaces.
Right. This sounds like the section covering some of the more maybe luxurious or hobby-specific additions.
Exactly. The sources listed DIY projects for creating things like home wine cellars. They went into details like how to install modular wine racks, how to build countertop racks, or even a tasting table, and technical stuff like how to properly install tile on a concrete floor, which you often find in basements where cellars might go.
Home gyms were mentioned too, right? Often in basements as well.
Yep. The sources touched on lighting ideas for gyms, the importance of mirrors, mentioning costs, and how to install composite mirrors, which are lighter and safer than glass, and even details like installing ballet bars.
And home theaters, another popular one.
Mentioned as well with notes on crucial technical aspects, like planning how to route all the cables neatly and installing recessed wall speakers for that clean look and optimal sound.
The sources also came back to the idea of building bookcases, didn't they?
Yes, building floor-to-ceiling units, creating bookcases set into tiled wall niches, and revisiting those fascinating hidden rooms behind bookcases. Lots of bookcase ideas.
What else? Any other unique projects?
Installing rolling ladders, like you see in old libraries, for accessing tall shelves. Integrating beer kegerators for home bars or entertaining spaces. Designing dedicated cigar lounges with specific notes on appropriate ceiling treatments and lighting. And even creating outdoor meditation ponds.
Okay, well, maybe not every homeowner is putting in a cigar lounge or a hidden room, These examples from the sources are great for inspiration. They show the sheer breadth of what remodeling can achieve, and they highlight some of the specific construction details involved, whether it's specialized tiling for a cellar, routing cables for a theater, or building custom features like rolling ladders.
It really illustrates the range, from practical necessities to pursuing passions through home design.
All right, now moving towards the practical side of actually getting a project done. The sources also offered some really valuable tips on project management and vetting contractors, mostly drawn from professional perspectives.
Yeah, this gets into the crucial who and how do I choose the right person part of the process. Essential research for any homeowner undertaking a remodel.
One source explicitly suggested working with a contractor who offers project management services. What was the reasoning?
According to the source, their expertise helps alleviate the stress of scheduling, which can be huge, and ensures that every detail is executed flawlessly. The big benefit mentioned was having a well-managed timeline that keeps momentum steady throughout the project.
That makes perfect sense. Juggling different tradespeople, material deliveries, waiting for inspections. It's a massive logistical puzzle that a good project manager is paid to solve.
Another absolutely vital tip highlighted across the sources was the importance of open and consistent communication with your contractor. One source flat out stated this is vital to the success of your remodel.
Transparency builds trust, reduces misunderstandings, keeps everyone on the same page. Seems fundamental, but the sources really emphasize how crucial it is in the potentially stressful environment of a remodel.
And one source gave us a little peek behind the contractor's curtain, noting that if a contractor suspects a project is risky, they have options for how to proceed.
Implying that contractors are also evaluating the project itself, not just the client. They're doing their own investigation.
Exactly. It hints at their internal process for assessing potential challenges and deciding whether or how to take on a job. It's not just you vetting them, they're vetting the project too.
That's a really interesting perspective to keep in mind. Did the sources touch on estimating?
Briefly, mentioned the need for contractors to understand the difference between job site overhead and general company overhead and profit. How estimating the project duration is key for figuring out the cost of general conditions, the central role of bid forms in the process, and even the wrap-up work after a bid is submitted, like reviewing all the prices received and carefully handling queries from subcontractors.
That glimpse into the estimating side just shows how much detailed financial and logistical planning happens on the contractor's end, even before work starts.
And circling back to vetting, that source focused on kitchen remodeling contractors. It hammered home the point again. A strong portfolio gives a contractor instant credibility, answers your questions about their experience, and helps them land the job.
So, presented again as a clear, actionable tip for homeowners. Always ask to see examples of a contractor's past work. It's a fundamental part of your research and vetting.
Absolutely. These tips on project management, communication, and vetting, including looking carefully at portfolios, are incredibly valuable takeaways from these sources for anyone thinking about a remodel. They're drawn from professional experience and offer concrete advice on what qualities and practices lead to a successful project. Essentially, they give you guidelines for your own research.
And navigating all these details we've talked about, understanding the structure, the plumbing, the electrical, making design choices, selecting materials, and then effectively planning the project and vetting the right team, it's a significant undertaking for any homeowner.
It truly is. It demands time, specific knowledge, and meticulous attention to detail that, let's be honest, many people just don't have readily available while juggling everything else in life.
These tasks are precisely the kind of complex investigative needs a homeowner faces right from the start. And this is exactly where getting experienced professional help can make such a huge difference.
Our sponsor, Royal Family Construction, specializes in handling these complex parts of remodeling. As we've seen from these sources, everything needs to be done correctly, from the foundation up, including all those hidden systems. Their 5-star reviews really are a testament to their expertise in managing these challenges from the initial investigation and planning right through to the flawless execution.
They are absolutely equipped to take on that significant burden of investigation, planning, coordination, and technical execution that these sources highlight as being so essential for success.
Which in turn frees you, the homeowner, up.
Exactly. Frees you up to focus on your vision for your home, the design choices you're excited about, the whole transformation itself. That's the real benefit of working with a trusted, experienced team. They handle the complexity so you can focus on what truly matters. Getting the home you envision.
Well said.
So if you're considering a remodel and maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed by the sheer volume of detail and planning involved, or if you just want to ensure your product is handled by experts with a proven track record and those fantastic 5-star reviews, definitely consider giving Royal Family Construction a call. You can reach them at 818-441-6705. Let them handle your investigative needs so you can focus on what truly matters.
Okay, so we've covered a massive amount of ground in this deep dive, pulling all sorts of insights and details directly from the sources provided.
We really have. We explored different types of remodeling projects like ADUs, noting those tricky regulations. We looked closely at kitchen and bath remodels, discussing market trends, design ideas, specific materials, all drawn from the sources. We examined landscape projects, highlighting their value and the detailed planning involved.
And we dove deep into the technical core structural framing details. That incredibly thorough look at plumbing systems covering everything from pipe types to code requirements, a glimpse into the growing complexity of electrical systems, and the vital role of insulation materials and installation strategies. We really extracted specific procedures and requirements found in those manuals and guides.
And we discussed design considerations more broadly, too, from the tangible material choices like flooring, countertops, and trim, to aesthetic principles like creating visual depth, planning different spaces, and we even highlighted some really unique specialty projects like hidden rooms or wine cellars, all based on ideas presented right here in the sources.
And finally, we distilled those critical tips found in the sources about project management and vetting contractors, underscoring the value of professional oversight, the absolute necessity of clear communication, and practical steps like always checking a contractor's portfolio.
This deep dive, built entirely from the material our listener brought to the table, really does offer a solid foundation. It's research, practical tips, and a better understanding of all the different facets involved in home remodeling. It's like a shortcut to being well-informed, highlighting the complexities, yes, but also illuminating the possibilities, and giving you concrete details to think about for your own potential project.
It's definitely clear from all this that successful remodeling involves understanding such pretty intricate technical systems, requires very detailed planning and careful material selection, and benefits hugely from skilled execution and really clear communication with a professional team.
And remember, navigating all these intricacies, it can be a lot. Getting expert help can truly make all the difference in ensuring your project is successful, less stressful, and achieves the level of quality you're hoping for. Our sponsor, Royal Family Construction, is ready to help you with exactly that. They have fantastic 5-star reviews because they handle these details, these investigative needs, with proven expertise.
You can reach them at 818-441-6705. Let Royal Family Construction handle your investigative needs so you can focus on what truly matters.
So, to leave you with a final thought, based on this really extensive deep dive into the sources, considering the sheer range and depth of information we uncovered from the specifics of ADU laws in California and insulation R values, to that bewildering array of plumbing pipe joints, the subtle nuances of material choices like butcher block countertops, and the detailed planning needed for landscape design, what single aspect of your own potential remodeling project now feels most critical for you to either research further, maybe using sources like these, or perhaps more effectively, discuss in detail with a trusted professional.
That's a wrap for this episode of Mastermind Conversations, a Pro Insights podcast powered by Geek in New York, where we don't just talk, we geek it. We hope you gain valuable insights, learn something new, and are ready to apply it in business and life. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps us bring you even more great content. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and always geek it.